Okay. So let me just uh, repeat quickly what I had done before and getting back into the portion. So um, our portion this week is Shoftim. It's on page 1088 in Eitz Chaim. It's great to see everybody again after summer, and I hope everybody is doing well. We're in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, beginning with verse 18, the context being Moses speaking to the people of Israel as they're about to enter the land of Israel, and also to the 2.5 tribes, Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh, who were given permission by God to settle there on the other side of the Jordan. That is the east bank of the Jordan River, as opposed to going into what will be the bulk of the land of Israel, the west side of the Jordan River. So the people are already in the process of settling, 2.5 tribes of them, and the rest of them are about to do the rest, about to settle the land. And so Deuteronomy provides Moses the vehicle to remind the people of their religious mission and heritage, and also to provide them the laws that will be the basis and foundation for the society that they're going to be establishing in the land of Israel. Some of the laws that we have in Deuteronomy are new, like some of the laws that are in this portion, Shoftim, and others are a repeat of what we've had in other books of the Torah. So let me say the blessing again. Just for those who are watching a recording, you have no idea why I would be saying the blessing again. But we did start the class at 11 o'clock. It's 11:16 now, but then the internet went down in the building, so we started the recording again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So, reading the first few verses of this week's portion, and also we'll look at one or two other sections of the portion as well. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the beginning of the portion discusses. Shoftim v'shotrim titein lacha b'chol she'arecha, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lacha lishvatecha, v'shavtu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. So the English translates Shoftim v'shotrim as magistrates and officials. I'm not sure that that's the best translation. Certainly, there is a book of the Bible known as Shoftim. And no matter what version of the Bible you use, and whatever Bible you purchase, the book of Shoftim in English is Judges. Okay, so why the book of Judges is known as Judges and is translated, Shoftim is translated as Judges for the book of Judges. Why isn't it translated as Judges here? Perhaps the editors from the Jewish Publication Society are making a point about the exact role as that these Shoftim play. And that as opposed to the judges, the Shoftim, that are presented in the book of Judges. Those of us in the Bible class on Fridays will be resuming this in 2 days, our study of the book of Judges. Know that those judges don't fill the definition of what a judge in the English language is. So a judge that we picture, whether it's a TV judge like Judge Judy or other judges in courts that we see in media, in recordings of court sessions, those judges actually judge cases that come before the court. The judges who are talked about in the book of Judges are not that kind of judge. Those judges are kind of military leaders of the people. Some take on a religious role too, but most of them are military leaders. So that begs the question exactly what a judge is. So perhaps by translating it as magistrate, the translation is providing us an understanding that these Shoftim are very local, serve a very local purpose. These aren't judges who are Supreme Court judges. They don't sit in the capital city and adjudicate cases that are the last resort and require the most research and import, like the Supreme Court of the United States, but rather these are people who sit at the gates of the cities and handle very minor cases that might come before them. So, and a shoter in modern Hebrew, that's the singular for shotrim, the plural. A shoter in modern Hebrew is a policeman. So a shoter in the Bible, somebody who keeps order, I would say, would be the appropriate definition of that term. So a shofet based on the Torah and what it's describing would be a local official to handle minor civil cases, and a shoter is an official. So there would be these people that will be appointed. That is, you put before you Shoftim v'Shotrim. So you, that is the people of Israel, will appoint for yourselves these people, bechol sha'arecha, in all of your gates, that is, in all of your towns, asher, that God, your God, gives to you in your tribes. So within every tribe, there are going to be towns, and the book of Joshua talks about all the towns that the people of Israel possess. That is, they dispossess the land of the Canaanite population, and then they possess those very towns and cities that are now empty. So all of those towns are going to have their own officials to take care of their needs, and they will v'shaftu, and they will govern. So even that, so the shaftu is the verb form for shoftim. A shofet is the noun. Shaftu, they do the work of what the noun is that describes who they are. So you would say a judge judges, but a magistrate magistrates. Well, it doesn't say that. It says governs. So that they will shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. So it says here they will govern the people with due justice. So I want to spend a moment just, if we just look at the English translation, okay, it's beautiful that they're supposed to, the people of Israel are supposed to set aside or appoint people who are going to justly maintain order in the community. Okay, so that's an important point right there, but understanding the Hebrew literally provides another layer to understand exactly what's being described here. So these people who the people of Israel appoint, it's unclear the process of how they appoint. There's no, in the early history of Israel, there's no such thing as elections. Joshua and Judges and Samuel do not talk about election. They talk about people who are appointed by God to be these people. Okay, and then after in the book of Samuel, then the book of Kings, obviously talk about kings of Israel. So the lower people are not really described in those books. These very people who sit at the gates. We don't know their names, and we don't know how they're appointed. Okay, but But the Bible does not know of elections in the sense that we know them in the democratic society in which we live. So, however they're appointed, whether appointed by God or by the king or some other high official, they're going to do their work. It's not necessarily governing. So governing implies that they serve as a Congress. And that's not the sense that I have for what's happening here in the Torah. It's not the Congress. It's really the courts that are going to ensure that the society is run every day justly, and that if somebody transgresses a law, that there'll be a way to take care of that. And it's that kind of governing. It's making sure that that people follow the law. And so what's asked of them, these people who enforce that, so judges and police do the legal enforcement, right? In America today, you drive over the speed limit, and if a police officer catches you doing that, it's going to pull you over. You're going to get a ticket, and then you can argue that in a court. So police officers and court work in partnership. So we could understand Shoftim and Shotrim as that very partnership that exists today in America today. But they're asked to do that work with mishpat tzedek, so with due justice here, but it should be a just law that underlies the system. So if we look below the line on 1088, on the right-hand side, a word there about due justice. Right? Mishpat tzedek. The Hebrew says mishpat tzedek. Berkovitz, who is a major philosopher thinker in Israel, distinguishes between these terms. So what is mishpat and what is tzedek? Tzedek, according to Berkovitz, is justice in the sense of doing the right thing in a legal procedure. Now, in my mind, that's what mishpat is. But according to Berkovitz and his understanding of biblical Hebrew, tzedek is the doing the right thing in a legal procedure. Mishpat is justice as a cosmic principle that maintains harmony in the world and makes possible the world's continued existence. So, according to Berkovitz, mishpat is the overarching sense of justice by which the world exists, and it's like God, in the traditional Jewish understanding, God governs the world with mercy and with justice. So today is the first day of Elul. And so we've begun Jewishly in the calendar to the process of getting ready for the high holidays, the process of doing a reckoning. And we picture God, and the liturgy on the high holidays especially pictures God as sitting on the throne of justice. And our job in the liturgy throughout the high holiday season is to get God to move off of the throne of justice onto the throne of mercy, right? So if in the liturgy, the rabbis want the world to be conducted by God with justice, with a sense of mercy attached. So that in that understanding, justice not to be understood as black and white. So in other words, let's say somebody's pulled over on the highway and the radar gun says they're going 80 in a 55 zone. So black and white justice, person going 80 in a 55 is going to get a ticket. But the mercy would be that the police officer would listen to the story that the driver tells. So let's say the driver is driving his wife to the hospital because she's in labor. Perhaps the mercy aspect of the justice being you're going 80, you get a ticket, don't care what story it is. The mercy aspect is let you go or follow me so we can get there quickly and safely. That's the mercy part. Okay, so the mercy, so that's just a minor, very, very minor example of what the bigger picture is that we're doing on the high holidays. Try to have God understand what our story is, that that was the basis for the way we acted. And if black and white justice, we didn't do exactly right, well, maybe in our mind, we were trying to do the right thing, but we made the decision based on our understanding of what the right decision would have been at that moment. And we're trying to convince God or get some kind of affirmation that that choice that we made is okay, right? So the due justice, the mishpat tzedek, is the understanding that in this gray area in which we all live, right? There's black and white, and really people cannot function in the world in a black and white way. It just doesn't work that way. The world doesn't work that way. And some people find it very difficult to live in a non-black and white world, to live in the gray. That for some people, that the understanding that there isn't exactly a right decision in this moment, and that it requires some thinking and some deliberation, that is very hard for some people. For example, people who live in the ultra-Orthodox world like to live in the black and white. I mean, they literally dress black and white, and they live black and white because that it's just easier to know this is what you have to do now. And there's a sense of relief in knowing that there's no burden of decision, of individual choice in that ultra-Orthodox black and white world. However, and so that's why there are people who choose to become part of that world simply because it's just a lot easier to have somebody else make the decisions for you about everything that you do in life. Most people, though, do not live that way and are faced then with the burden of choices that we have to make. And we need validation that the choices that we're making are correct. We don't know. I mean, some choices that we make are related to end of life questions or beginning of life questions as well. They're very, very difficult questions to answer, and there is no right answer that will be the right answer for everybody. Life just does not work that way, and so we need the guideline. So as a religious community, as a Jewish community, we need the Jewish guidelines to help us make decisions in these difficult gray areas that life faces, that we face in life. And so that's what I think Mishpat Tzedek means. It's the guidance, the understanding of what the basic spiritual, religious, Jewish, ethical, moral guidelines are, so that we come up with the answer that is best for us that will still be Jewish. And different people will have different answers that will still be Jewish answers. Okay, there are Jews who would advocate a pro-life stance, and there are Jews who advocate a pro-choice stance. Neither one is absolute. It all depends on the situation. So is Judaism pro-life or pro-choice? the answer, not to be facetious, is yes. So it all depends on the situation. Okay, and that's just one example of many in which we try to make these choices. Okay, so that's, I think, what Shoftim and Shotrim and Mishpat Tzedek are talking about. So understanding that even in giving somebody a speeding ticket, there should be a sense of understanding what the story is, to be sure that the speeding ticket is really meant and should be given in that situation, to very much more serious cases as well. Okay, so to add some details to how to have a mishpat tzedek, do justice, verse 19, lo tateh mishpat, lo takir panim, lo tikach shochad, ki hashochad ye'aver einei chachamim, visalef divrei tzadikim. So don't tilt justice, and don't be biased. Lo takir panim. That is, don't recognize faces, I think means don't be biased. Just because you know somebody, you shouldn't say, oh, I know that person, so I'm going to base my decision on that person's character that I know, as opposed to giving somebody else who you don't know, who's the defendant or the other person in the case, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You want to be as neutral as possible in serving as a judge. Don't lean one way, don't be biased, and certainly don't take a bribe. Why? Because the bribe blinds the eyes of the sages, and I think also means it upsets the plea for justice. I think it's just another way of saying it also blinds justice. It blinds the sages, the wise. It also blinds the words of the righteous ones, the just ones. Okay, so 20, tzedek tirdof lama'an tichye v'yarashta et haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. So this kind of justice, which I think really is what, in the commentary below, is what really mishpat is. Justice as a cosmic principle that maintains harmony in the world and makes possible the world's continued existence, that kind of justice is what we're supposed to be pursuing so that we can inherit the land, possess the land that God gives us, that we could be true stewards of the land, we could be true partners with God by pursuing justice, right? So I think the idea is, if we imagine that God is just, we're supposed to be just, right? We're supposed to copy these ideals that we ascribe to God in our own life and behavior. And by doing that, we are partnering with God, and we are saying that we deserve to live on earth. Okay. Any thoughts or comments about these ideas of justice? So I wanted to now look a little bit at...
Wait, I wanted to...
Go ahead, Deborah.
Because since Beth isn't here, so I looked it up. A magistrate and a judge are not the same thing. A magistrate has to do with like a lower court, or they're the first point of contact for defendants, minor offenses, preliminary hearings, and family law cases.
Okay. All right. So yes. So perhaps, again, just because of the context of how the portion Shoftim begins, it seems like it's talking about those localized people in charge, which would, as you defined it on whatever source you went to on the internet, that's what a magistrate is. But I'm saying that it's that the Torah is taking this very low-level official, someone sitting at the city gate, and then expanding upon that on the broader topic of what justice is all about. Okay.
Now, does that have anything to do, like, is that related to the verb shofar?
No, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. No, all three letters have to be in the same order in the root for them to be related. Okay, so just because you have the shin and the fei doesn't mean then that any shin fei word would be related to every other shin fei word. You need all three letters. And there are times that a three-letter root could have a variety of meanings, but those three letters have to be in the same order for them to be an interesting linguistic kind of discussion to have.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. So now I wanted to look at the case of describing a prophet. Let's jump ahead to page 1096. 1096, and Moses is kind of setting the stage too. Okay, so you're going to have these judges, these magistrates at the city gate to handle, just basic everyday stuff. And and justice in general is what we need to pursue. So who else is going to be there to lead the people? And because Moses knows he's about to die, he's not going into Israel with them. So who's going to carry on in Moses's place? So you have these judges who are going to take care of these magistrates who are going to take care of everyday life. But the bigger picture for the society as a whole, who's going to lead the people? He says on 1096, Navi, so we're chapter 18, verse 15. Navi mikir bacha me'achecha kamoni yakim lecha Adonai Elohecha elav tishma'un. A prophet from your midst, from your fellow people, from your brothers. So in other words, don't take it gender specific, but understand it's going to be from among you. So from among the people of Israel, there will arise Yakim Lacha, God, your God, will establish for you a prophet from among you, from among your people, Kamoni, like me. To him you should listen or obey or hark. Okay, so God's going to establish or set up another prophet to take my place. Kechol asher sha'alta me'im Adonai Elohecha bechorev b'yom hakahal lemor lo osef lishmoa et kol Adonai Elohai ve'et ha'esh hagdola hazot lo er'eod velo amut. And he will, this is like what you asked from God, your God, at Chorev, which is Deuteronomy's word for Mount Sinai, that you asked at Mount Sinai in the day that God gathered, we were all gathered, that we can't listen to the voice of God, my God, that the fire is this fire is too great. I can't see it because I'll die. In other words, at Mount Sinai, they said to Moses, you go up and speak on our behalf because this is just too scary for us. That's what the book of Exodus says. That it was just too much for the people to endure what happened at Mount Sinai. They said to Moses, you be our leader. So it's that kind of leadership of a prophet speaking on the people's behalf to God and having that ability to hear God's word and to dialogue with God. That's what a prophet is. 17, Vayomer Adonai Elai Hetivu Asher Diberu. God said to me, they said good. They spoke well what they said. In other words, I agree. We should have a prophet. 18, Navi Akim Lahem Mikerev Achehem Kamocha Venatati Devarai Befiv Vediber Alehem Et Kol Asher Atzavenu. I will establish for them a prophet from among the people like you, and I'll put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I command him. So that's what the prophet does. The prophet is God's mouthpiece, and God will establish such a person. 19. V'haya ish asher lo yishma el devarai, asher yedaber bishmi, anochi edrosh me'imo. And there could be a person who doesn't listen to my word, that he speaks in my name. I will call him into account. 20. Achanavi asher yazid ledaber davar bishmi, et asher lo tzivitiv ledaber, ve'asher yedaber b'shem Elohim acherim umet hanavi hahu. But if there's a prophet who intentionally speaks a word in my name that I have not commanded him to say, and he speaks in the name of a different God with a small g, that prophet should die. So in other words, there could be a variety of people who get up and claim to be a prophet. And one of them will be someone that God speaks to directly, and others will claim that they're speaking on God's behalf, or they'll claim that they're speaking on Baal's behalf or some other pagan god's behalf. So those who don't speak in God's name, who claim to but are not speaking in God's name, and who also claim to be speaking on Baal's behalf or some other god's behalf, that kind of prophet should be put to death. So how do we know? Verse 21, V'chi tomar bilvavecha, echa neda et hadavar asher lo dibro Adonai. So if you say in your heart, how are we supposed to know the word that God did not say? In other words, how are we supposed to know the difference between what people are saying, that one is actually speaking the true prophet and the other is not? 22, Asher yedaber hanavi b'shem Adonai v'lo yihiyeh hadavar v'lo yavohu hadavar asher lo dibro Adonai b'zadon dibro hanavi lo tagur mimenu. So how do we know? Well, the word of that prophet in the name of God that doesn't come true, lo yihiyeh, it does not come true, and it won't take place. That's the word that God did not speak. He has uttered it presumptuously, it says here, or intentionally false. Right? The prophet is speaking intentionally falsely, and do not stand in dread of him. That is, do not listen to him. So it makes it very difficult. So there are two things here. One thing is the idea that in every generation there's going to be somebody that God appoints as a prophet. And I would question, who is that prophet today? So who takes the role of the prophet today? Or is it in the Jewish community? Is it the rabbi? Is it teachers in Jewish schools? Are they prophets? And knowing that the Jewish community is so diverse and broken down into different denominations, are there different prophets for each denomination? Or is there one prophet who speaks for all Jews? Could it be a political advisor to the Prime Minister of Israel? Is that a prophet? Is it, like I said, is it a synagogue rabbi? Is it a teacher? Is it a Jewish thinker? Like, there aren't really prominent Jewish philosophers today. Where there isn't really like an Abraham Joshua Heschel or a Mordecai Kaplan or Martin Buber. These are big, important, big in the sense of great, not in physical size, but these are important Jewish thinkers of the 20th century. Do we have important Jewish thinkers like them in the 21st century? I mean, would we say that, I don't know, a David Wolpe is in that circle? I mean, certainly he hasn't written academic works of Jewish philosophy like Heschel, Buber, or Kaplan, but he has written extensively to talk about, is it David Wolpe, is it Brad Artson, is it Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove? Are these the prophets of our generation? Maybe. So the idea also that they're not speaking falsely. In other words, any predictions that might be part of their words should come true. And if they don't come true, then they're false. Well, it depends what they're predicting. Right? If they're predicting that in 20 years, so you're supposed to wait 20 years to then say that this person was a prophet or was not a prophet, that's the problem. How do we as a people, how do we know who to listen to? We have some guidelines, but how do we know with the opportunity that there is, knowing that the judicial system or the system of Jewish law, halakha, is so broad that a variety of positions can fit within the framework of halakha? How do we know that one person who has one particular stance of halakha is right and the other person who has a different particular stance of halakha is wrong? So in other words, do we know that conservative Judaism and someone who speaks for conservative Judaism is right and someone who speaks for Reform Judaism is wrong, or vice versa? How do we know? Like, what's the time frame? So what I mean by all of this is that this raises very deep theological, philosophical questions for the Jewish community today. Like, who do we turn to know how to make the decisions that need to be made? Who do we turn to help us navigate through the chaos of the world around us, right? So today, as opposed to 20 years ago, the crises that face the Jewish community today are far more than we faced 20, 30 years ago. The existential threat to Israel's survival that is today is very different than it was even at the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. And the threat to the Jewish community in terms of anti-Semitism is much greater today than it was 20, 30 years ago. So we need leadership to help us, to comfort us, and to help steer us into the future. If we see that as the role of the prophet, then who is our prophet, right? So it makes for a difficult understanding of how we know who the prophet is. So the Torah is saying that God's going to establish a prophet for us. What I'm suggesting is it's not exactly clear that we know who has been set to be the leader of the people. Okay? So there's that I wanted to say as well. The other topics I want to bring up, we don't have time to really discuss today. It's 11:53. So any thoughts or comments about this, about justice, about prophets? Well, it was very good to see everybody. I feel glad about getting back into the swing of these classes. And I appreciate you joining in on this journey as we grow together. And have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Take care.
Okay, y'all should call up Jonah.